All right, here we are, Georgia Football Virtual Clinic 2023. We got Coach Joe Stokowski, the strength conditioning coordinator, the defense coordinator, the track and field coordinator, the bus driver, everything for Jackson. So, Coach, excited to have you join me again. We talked not too long ago. I'll tell you this, Coach, before you get started. One of the best compliments is when I put stuff out and said we needed people. I wanted to know who people wanted to hear from. Many people wanted to hear from you about this. So the word's getting out about you doing a good job with the speed training, man, and should be proud of that. So excited to hear what you have to say. Talking about bringing the Feed the Cat system to Georgia. So take it away, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Banks from Greene County, he had mentioned he'd seen some of the work I'd done with some of our speed training, and today I just want to give you guys a little rundown. The presentation I'm going to give today, I've given the same presentation that's been about twice as long. So if you hear something today and you'd like more information, please do not hesitate to reach out. So like Coach Parker said, I wear a lot of hats, and I'm going to kind of talk about how those hats intersect. I'm at Jackson High School, which is in Butts County, Georgia. We're about 45 minutes south of the Atlanta airport. Just to give you a little background on me, if you don't know anything about me, I grew up in Central Illinois. If you look at those different spots on the map, I did a little 2-year stint as a grad assistant equivalent at Illinois State. Then I was at Farmington Central High School for 3 years, 2 of those as the defensive coordinator. Then I spent 2 years at Villa Grove High School. This is all in Illinois, where I was the head football coach. Wanted to move to warmer weather. Had an opportunity to teach and coach at Pepperell High School under Rick Hurst for 3 years, and was able to move into the strength and conditioning realm at Jackson High School, where I've been now for the last 2 years. And as you can see, there our world famous water tower. Welcome to beautiful Butts County. All right, now we're going to talk a lot about data tonight. We're going to talk a lot about tracking data and how you can benefit your kids in that way. But the big thing I want to say is that kids are not data points. Kids are not spreadsheets. Kids are not graphs. Kids are kids. And at the end of the day, we're in the business of coaching kids and putting them in the best position. And these 2 gentlemen I have here pictured, I want to mention them real quick. The man on the left, that's Spence Nowinski. He is currently the defensive coordinator at Ohio University. Him and I crossed paths when I was at Illinois State. And what he taught me is that if you love kids, then you can coach them as hard as they've ever been coached through the history. A lot of people today say kids are this, kids are that. At the end of the day, what I have found is that if a kid knows that you will fight for them, that they will fight for you. And the man on the right, his name is Toby Vallis, who I had the fortune of working under for 2 years at Farmington Central High School. And what he taught me is don't give up on kids. At the end of the day, a lot of us get paid pretty well. And that's one of the big reasons I wanted to move to Georgia, is because I know coaches get paid well down here. But at the end of the day, that money comes from the taxpayers in our communities if you're a public school teacher. And at the end of the day, it's not our job to give up on kids. It's our job to give them as many opportunities as we can find to put them in a position to be successful. And so I just want to give a shout out to those 2 men right there, because I wouldn't be half the coach I am today without their guidance. All right. So to give you kind of an idea how I came about some of these ideas, the first thing I want to talk about is when I became a head football coach, I was thrust into the position of being able to, or having to create a strength program. And my brother-in-law, he led me in a direction of Jim Wendler. Jim Wendler has a system called the 5-3-1 system. If you're not familiar with that, I'd be happy to give you more information at that. But it's a really rudimentary system on training. It's something that we do with our kids. And it was one of those things where when I was finding out about it, I thought it was very, very smart. And then as I learned more about the trade, I realized that all these years I was kind of on the right track, doing the right things, even though I didn't know it at the time. But one of the things that Jim said in his book, 5-3-1 for Football, is he said the idea simplified with linear speed development is to have your athletes moving as fast as they can with full recovery. So linear speed development is performed toward the beginning of the workout. Too many coaches treat their speed work as conditioning work. You wouldn't expect a kid to squat his personal best after doing sets of 10 reps with limited rest times. So don't expect your kids to get fast if you don't give them time to get faster. That was a gateway for me. So when I encountered these 2 gentlemen here, I was very receptive to the things that they were teaching. The gentleman on the left, his name is Chris Corfist. He is one of the smartest men in the world when it comes to the ankle and how it benefits athletes. You see a man laying on a table right there. I did the exact same thing. I went and learned about RPR, which is you see that in the top left corner. RPR is reflexive performance reset. Long story short, it's a set of pressure points and different things in the body that can help us go from a sympathetic response to a parasympathetic response. And in simple terms, what that is that we want our kids to not be in fight or flight when they're going to compete. We want them to be able to process and be in a flow state, not in a state of fear or panic. And it's something I use personally. It's something that I use with some of our athletes, and something that I do believe in. And so when I went to learn about RPR at a clinic, he was advertising something else they were doing called TFC. That's a track football consortium. And long story short, these two gentlemen, they come together and they put together some of the best clinics in the country when it comes to learning more about strength and conditioning, speed development, and kind of the segue between all of those different disciplines. So that's when I met the gentleman on the right. That's Tony Holler. And as you see there, FTC stands for Feed the Cats. It's his training philosophy. And if you don't know anything about Feed the Cats, simply what it is that when you look at the spectrum of quality versus quantity, it is as far to the side of quality on the spectrum as you could possibly find. Do things with great intensity, with incredible rest times, with the idea of optimal outputs to improve optimal performance. And then the other three initials you see there in the top right corner is RRP, which stands for Record, Rank, and Publish. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit today in my presentation. All right, so we have this idea. We know we want our football players to be stronger. We know we want them to be faster. And at the end of the day, we know we want that output to result in our chance to stop people from scoring and score more points on a Friday night. So I'm going to go over some of the things that we do at Jackson High School with tracking our athletes that can help us lead us to those outcomes. Now, these outcomes exist in a couple different ways. One of the ways that they exist is that the kid can know where they're strong and where they're weak and what traits they need to work on. So that's huge for us. It can also help us as coaches identify those things and give us guidance in our training. But it can also, and this is where I think the real kicker is, give us guidance in our scheming. What can we do with the players that we have, with the skill sets that they bring us? All right. We don't want to fit a round peg into a square hole. So we're going to touch on those things as I go through today. All right. So this diagram here, this is how we kind of quantify all of our athletes. These three shapes that you see, they exist for three different athletes. The blue shape is Clayton Hickson. He currently just finished his first year at Wofford. He graduated from Jackson last season. He is a lineman. So as you see this shape here, it is very narrow. The reason it's stretched so far to the top is that he is a massive individual, about 6'2", 310, incredible athlete for how big he is. The orange shape you see, that is Okemus Greer. He is a senior for us this year at Jackson. He's an all-state triple jumper, one of the most dynamic kids in the state of Georgia, under 150 pounds. And then the gray shape, that's Dawson Livingston. He just finished his freshman year at Berry College, where he plays kind of a hybrid defensive end, stand-up DN linebacker role for them. He played Mike linebacker and running back for us. Now, those are three very distinct shapes, and I'm going to talk about what those shapes mean and how we use those for the improvement of our players. All right. So as you see here, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but at the end of the day, what we've done here is that we've created a battery of tests and then created a percentile range to represent how well they do on those battery of tests. So these 5 things I'm going to talk here as we go through, but very simply, like miles per hour. If you know anything about miles per hour sprinting, if a kid can sprint 22 miles an hour, it's very, very fast. So the 0th percentile for that is 14 miles an hour. If they're any slower than that, or they're at 14 exactly, it doesn't register on the chart here. All the way up to 24 miles an hour is our 100th percentile. Now, I do not personally have any kids that can run that fast. Probably the fastest kids in the state of Georgia may be able to hit that. But these ranges are just what we use for that. So if the chart is something that really intrigues you, that can give you kind of some guidance on where these numbers are coming from. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is it's in gold bubble up there, PPI, or pounds per inch. That is our basic metric we use to quantify the size of our athletes. And that is a very simple equation. We take how much they weigh in pounds divided by how tall they are in inches. So very simply, if a kid is 5'10", he's 70 inches tall. So if he's 140 pounds, 70 inches tall, he's 2.0 pounds per inch. That is a skinny high school kid. If he's 210 pounds divided by 70 inches, he's 3.0. That's a thick linebacker. If he's 280 pounds divided by 70 inches, he's 4.0 pounds per inch. You want to find a way to get to college football? Get to 4.0 pounds per inch and sprint 17 miles an hour on a track. I've had 2 kids ever do that, and they both got a Division I scholarship. What you'll find is most kids do not have the body frame to put on that much weight to display those athletic abilities. All right. So these 3 gentlemen you have here, Clayton on the left, Okemus in the middle, and Dawson on the right. You see how they broke down the last time I measured and weighed them. So you see that Clayton, 4.09 pounds per inch, very big lineman. Okemus 2.17. That's a very small skill kid. And then Dawson was 3.6, very stocky, stout. You know, he was every bit of 5'9", 5'10", 250 at times. Very stout lineman or linebacker for us. All right. And the second thing we're going to talk about, and this is really what I speak most about, is our speed training, miles per hour. So 93.4% of Jackson touchdowns in 2021 and 2022 were scored by athletes who sprinted 20 plus miles per hour on the spike in tracks, or on the track in spikes. That for us is a huge KPI. KPI stands for key performance indicator, something that's going to indicate for us that an athlete is going to have an ability to perform for us on a Friday. So does that mean every kid that can run 20 is scoring touchdowns? Absolutely not. But it does mean that that's an incredibly important bucket for us. Now, of those 5 touchdowns that were not scored by those athletes, one of them was a quarterback keeper against Thomasville in the playoffs. Our quarterback had a bum knee. He probably did not reach on that play anything above about 11 miles per hour. It was really funny in the play. The receiver didn't even block the DB, who didn't even pursue the quarterback, because it was the first time he pulled one all year. So that was a play scored completely on deception and 0 on speed. Now, the other 4 touchdowns were scored by the gentleman I'm about to show you in these next 2 clips. His name is Kamari Lamar. When I got to Jackson, he was a defensive end, kind of a undersized guard, and he completely transformed his body and became a better athlete. There you see him catching a pass. And then here he is against Mary Persons as our Wildcat quarterback out of our single wing. Now, he did not hit 20 miles an hour, but as you saw from that shake, he's a pretty good athlete. He was able to hit 19. And why that's so interesting for us is, as you look at his chart and his development, he completely changed the shape of his, we call it the house. That his house changed immensely. This orange shape is what he was when I got to Jackson. All right. He was, and really what this shape is, if you were to slap this onto the graph we saw earlier with those 3 athletes, you would say he's a small, slow lineman, pretty athletic, but just really wasn't moving the needle. As you can see here, he lost weight. He went from about 230 to 190, but his speed profile improved dramatically. His vertical jump profile improved dramatically. All right. So he became a better athlete. And by knowing that, by being able to quantify that, we knew, heck, this is the kid we got to get the ball. because Dawson, who I mentioned earlier, graduated. We needed a bigger body we could get the ball to. And who was that? Would you be able to identify on your team a kid who was a lineman last year, but is now one of your best pounds, per pound athletes on your team? Through this metric, we were able to do that. All right. So speed development, speed's huge for us. We sprint every single kid on the track in track spikes. That's huge for us. In the same way that you want optimal footwear in the weight room, we want optimal footwear on the track. We want those speeds to be as high as they can be so we can get as much stimulus as we can to affect as much change as we can find. And as you can see there, we collect track spikes. Something that it's a culture that permeates through our school. As you can see here, another thing we do is our wristbands, our miles per hour wristbands. Our kids get these. It's a huge thing for them, really just to show off, and we brag about them on social media. And it's just as exciting, the kid in the top right corner, he's a civilian kid, didn't play any sports, was a senior, got shoved in weight training. And I'd never seen a kid more excited than when he cleared a mile per hour in his last chance running before he graduated. All the way up to the two gentlemen in the middle. That's Junior Okimas, who you saw earlier. Those are two of the three athletes I have that can run 2 miles an hour, which for AAA in Georgia is very fast for us. The other thing that we do, and I mentioned this earlier with Tony, is record, rank, and publish. So as you can see here, we have leaderboards for sprinting and jumping on the window of my office at school. This faces out to the gymnasium, and all day I have kids walking by my office, looking at the window, talking trash about who's faster, who can jump higher. And that is a culture and a competitiveness that permeates through our program. It's something that I think reaps benefits for us. All right, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on how to get the speed data. I'm just real quick. So you can use a timing system, Freelap, Dasher. I own both. They're more expensive, but they're more efficient. Or you can do film analysis, like Coach's Eye, Dartfish. There's a myriad of other things you could use for that. It's less expensive, less efficient, but you do have the benefit of film analysis. When I was at Pepperell, I was teaching English, so I had way less time to do this. So we would have all the kids line up on the far left of this picture, and they would run one after another, and I would record them running from the 20th to the 30th yard of a sprint. You can take a look what that looks like here. You can kind of see the cones there. Are his hips through there yet? No. Now they are. And as he runs, are his hips through here? No. Are they now? Yes. So he ran 103, which is a very, very fast 19 miles an hour. That athlete right there is Peyton Rhodes. He's now at Sacred Heart University playing receiver. If you want to know more about what we did there, this is my sales pitch I gave 2 years ago. I gave a presentation on this. Email me. I actually have a recording of that presentation. I'd be happy to send to you. But simply, we spent 90 seconds of practice time per week. And we got faster by November than we were in August. And if you want to know more about that, I'd be happy to share that with you. Again, it's an hour and a half presentation I have. All right. So when we get to basic, you may say, listen, I know how to coach the squat. I know how to coach the clean. I know how to coach a myriad of exercises in the weight room, but speed is kind of over my head. It does not need to be. And I tell you this as somebody who is not a good athlete and not very fast at all myself. But some really basic cues. And a lot of this I got from Tony Holler, who I mentioned earlier. I got this from Ken Clark, who is he's one of the smartest speed scientists in the world. He's the guy who they put a cheetah on a treadmill and they see why is the cheetah fast, like they're the higher level stuff. But they're looking for patterns in humans, what makes a person fast. And three really basic things. Tall, posture. Do you run tall, right? You don't want to run squatted. You don't want to run bent over. You don't want to run with a lean. When you get to your max velocity, you want to get tall and you want to cruise. The other is 3 bucket. Do you have good posture so you could put a bucket on your head? Do you have great knee lift, right? So you could put a bucket on your thigh and it not fall off. And do you have good dorsiflexion in the ankle, right? Are you bringing the big toe up to create a good hammer into the ground as your foot strikes? So 3-bucket posture, top of the head, top of the thigh, top of the foot when you're in your front side mechanics. That's when the knee is furthest in front of the body. And then for backside mechanics, so the foot goes and it lands and then it presses against the ground and then it comes behind. When you go through backside mechanics, a big one that we use is don't show your soul to Jesus. Now that's not S-O-U-L, it's S-O-L-E. So what we're talking about there is you don't want the underside of your foot to be shown to the sky. Because if you can envision kind of like how a kid does butt kicks, that is not a pattern we want to replicate. We want, when the foot leaves the ground, for that leg to snap forward as fast as it can to get us back in the position to put it in the ground again. All right. So I've broken a video of Christian Coleman's sprint mechanics down. As you can see here, his front side mechanics. Now, his foot is not perfect, but if you don't pay attention to his foot, as long as his foot is where it needs to be when it hits the ground, he's fine. That's not something all of our athletes can afford. A lot of them need to work on their form and need to work on some of this stuff to be more precise because they don't have the same turnover that an Olympic sprinter does, obviously. But as you can see here, he has great posture. He has great knee lift. All right. So as we go through some great sprinters of all time, Usain Bolt had a much better knee lift than Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson had a very wonky running form. He was leaned back in his torso. His leg did not come up that high, and he had a very long backside. As you can see here, his leg, like this angle, his thigh is way far behind his body. Most of our kids, if they were to run with the form of Michael Johnson, would be incredibly slow. What he has are some of the most incredible hamstrings of all time because he was able to let that leg trail and then snap it forward, probably better than any human in the history. So as you see here, as Christian runs, his foot is about to strike down. And now, when we talk about strike down, there's two things we want to look for. As you see, this athlete right here does not appear to have very good running form. He's leaned back. His leg in front is doing something we call casting. Casting is the idea that when the leg hits the ground, we want it to hit and roll over. What we don't want is it to stop, be a braking force, and our hip have to travel over that point. You also see that his backside, his foot is very much behind his body. Now, what you don't understand from this freeze frame is that this young man's hamstrings are also incredibly, incredibly elite. His foot is about to snap right under his body. His leg is about to snap forward because that young man in that picture is Matthew Bowling, who is has the record for the fastest high school 100 ever run and is now a runner for the Georgia Bulldogs. So what I'm showing you this is that if you have a really fast kid and they kind of have a wonky running form, you can work on things to make them healthier, but don't just think because it's wonky, it doesn't work. All right. So as he touches down, one thing that we want to look for is that when the foot touches down and the knees come, do the knees come together? If you can look here, let me get my mouse. Okay. So here's his knee and here's his swing leg. If the swing leg is behind the knee, it's a slow pull through. If it's even, that's good. We like when it's even. And we see here with Christian, his knee is actually in front. So that is elite. When that knee, when we have essentially when we're tallest or when our joints are all lined up, where is the opposite knee? It's better if it's even or in front, not behind. Because if it's behind, it's spending so much time in a trailing motion. And the more time it spends behind our body, the more time it spends behind our body, the longer it's going to take for it to get back into the ground and help propel us forward. All right. So there Christian runs, and you can see he's leaving his foot behind, but his snap through is so incredible. So Ken Clark, who I mentioned earlier, we have two athletes here running. The one on the left is a Olympic sprinter. The one on the right is a team sport athlete. Now, these are both very good athletes. But one thing that you will notice is that their torso is bent over. Now, when your torso is leaned, you're constantly in an acceleration because you're pushing back against the ground, right? There's a lot of ground contacts when we're bent over. As we get taller and faster, we want those ground contact times to start shortening, right? because the faster we can go with the least amount of friction in the ground, the closer we come to flying, right? And at the end of the day, we want to skip along the ground as fast as we possibly can. So here he has his pull through, and now he's back to his front side. All right, so two athletes I've had on the left, Trey Robinson, who played for me at Pepperell High School, and then on the right, Okemus Greer, who we talked about earlier. Trey very much had a very leaned forward. He was a good track sprinter, but the way he ran was very hard on his hamstrings and probably limited him somewhat in his ability to get to top speed. Where Junior, when he gets fast and gets tall, his joints line up. He runs tall. He's got good swing through. And so what do your kids look like in the open field? Do they get tall? A lot of times when a kid cannot pull away from others, it's usually some sort of deficiency in their top end sprint mechanics. All right, so pounds per inch, miles per hour. So I got really into UFC and MMA over the quarantine. And so I got this idea of, why can't we put our kids into weight classes when it comes to sprinting? Obviously, that's not something we do in track and field, but why can't we do it? Because it's something incredibly important to us as a football coach. All right. So this is one thing that I did. We break our kids up by pounds per inch into these weight classes. Now, these weight classes are not defined. I simply take all the kids and divide them into 5 even groups: flyweight, bantamweight, lightweight, middleweight, and heavyweight. Now, as you look here, these guys in the heavyweights running 16.95 wouldn't even register in these other groups. But at the end of the day, linemen are a different species than your skill kids. And so I don't, a kid being faster than another kid is irrelevant if you don't understand the context of how big they are, right? And so this is one way that we kind of level the playing field, or level the recognition for speed. All right. Now, when we translate that, it's, it sounds like a lot of stuff that's going to hype the kids up, but how can it help us win football games? As we look here, I have 2 metrics here. On the left side here, we have miles per hour. So 16 miles an hour, 17, 18, all the way to 22. And on the bottom, we have pounds per inch, 1.6 all the way to 4.0. So you can envision bottom left corner is small and slow. Top right corner is superhero big and fast. All right. Now, as you look here, we have 5 arrows. Now, these 5 arrows indicate our 5 starting linemen this year at Jackson High School. Now, compared to some of their teammates up here, no, they're not lightning fast. They're not running 19, 20, 21 miles an hour. But what you can see is that all of them are above the average for the team. So you see these athletes down here, right? Not as fast, right? And not as big. So what you can't see here either is I have plenty of athletes that don't run 16 miles an hour, that are down, below where this chart even indicates. But what I wanted to show is that these 5 linemen were able to display good speed for their size for our team. And it's no shock that they were the ones who ended up being the most athletic and the strongest, and the ones who ended up starting for us this season. All right. So if you want to find a way to quantify this is really, really simple. Put your kid through the pounds per inch metric, right? So for instance, let's say I have a kid who is 195 pounds and 5'10". He's 2.75 pounds per inch, or 2.79. So we're going to just round that. Let's just round that down to 2.75. As we look here on the chart, dark green on the bottom means, hey, that's a pretty good athlete. Let's track that kid. Purple at the top means get Nick Saban on the phone because I got a dude. All right. So as we look here, 2.75 at 17 miles an hour is pretty intriguing if it's a freshman or sophomore in our program. That's a kid we want to put stock into. But as we can see here, the faster they become, the more intriguing they get. All the way up to, if they can run 23 miles an hour at 2.75, now we got a guy. He's the real deal. And I'm going to show you how these colors translate into NFL players here in a second. That's what really might blow your socks off. Now, on this chart, there's 2 ways to improve, right? You can get faster from right to left, but you can also get bigger from bottom to top. So let's say that same athlete went from 195 to 212, didn't get any taller, but now they're 3.0, 3 pounds per inch. Let's say a kid We talk about improved two colors. Let's say a kid gets one size bigger, right? But also gets one size faster. Now all of a sudden we've got a much different athlete. Okay. If we can get bigger and stay the same speed, it's a win. If we can get faster and stay the same size, it's a win. But if we can get bigger and faster, we're going to have a better football team. All right. So earlier I showed you this chart. Now, as you look here on the miles per hour, our skill kid is faster than our linebacker, and our linebacker is faster than our linemen. But what you don't realize is that most linemen do not pull the mile per hour metric out that far. This is the kid who was 4.02 pounds per inch and ran 17 miles per hour on a track and spikes. Again, I've had two people ever do that, him and his twin brother, who is now playing at the University of South Carolina. Again, 4.0, 17 miles an hour, you're probably going to find yourself some college money. All right. So since the 2015 NFL Scouting Combine, those categories I just showed you, here's how they break down. So over a third of the people that have been drafted were in that purple. Now, where am I pulling this from? I'm looking at the back 20 yards of the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. I can pull max velocity, how fast did you run in miles per hour? I can pull some data off of that and cross-reference it with the size data that's provided at the Combine. And as you can see, most of these people, a large slice of the pie is up here in these higher ranks, all the way down. Very, very few of them exist down here. Big and fast is the name of the game when it comes to playing at the highest level of football. All right. So down here in the bottom right is bench press divided by body weight. I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time on that. I think that's something, if you're here, you probably know plenty about that. Now, we do back squat in our program. We also front squat. We also Zercher squat. We also split squat, rear foot elevated split squat. We do a whole bunch of squat variations. But we do back squat through a couple different cycles during our year. So I wanted to show you the cross between back squat and vertical jump. And as you can see here, of our here on the y-axis, we're dealing with back squat weight divided by body weight. And here on the x-axis, we're dealing with vertical jump in inches. And what you can see here is we get a 0.75, which in an R value is a strong correlation. At the end of the day, squat low, jump high. That's something I truly believe in. Get your kids moving well in the weight room. Once they're moving well, load them. Once they are loaded, yes, you can develop explosion and power in the weight room. Absolutely. But you also have to develop it through exploding as well. So what we do for that is we test our vertical jump. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do vertical jump. Obviously, you can buy a Vertex. Vertex is going to take a long time to put, let's say, 50 kids through. More efficient ways, but less exact ways. On the left, you see a Just Jump mat, which I own. And then on the right, you see something, a plyo mat, which was created by Rich Barnett, who was at Greater Atlanta Christian. And it's a great product that I'm hopefully looking to purchase here in the next year or so. But these are simply what they're switch mats. So you jump and it times how long you're off the ground. And as long as you land in an appropriate manner, it's going to give you a pretty good estimate on how many inches you jumped. All right. So two ways that we look at that. One is through the vertical jump. How many inches did they jump? And here you see we had a kid jump 34.1. This is our leaderboard from that day at school. But another thing that we look at is something called the Swanson Power Index. Now, I call it the Swanson Power Index because I learned about it from a guy named Steve Swanson when I was in Dallas a couple summers ago for Track Football Consortium. And it's a very, very simple metric. I'm going to put the formula up here in a second, but it's the square root of your body weight times the square root of the inches you jumped in the vertical. Put it plainly, anything above 80 is great. A friend of mine, Brandon Herring, who coaches over at Hewitt Trustville in Alabama, I gave him this. He goes, well, I just had a kid hit 92. And I was like, well, that's a freak show. He goes, yeah, he's an SEC kid. I was like, well, there you go. But anything above 80 is going to be a very, very good athlete. All right. So that's the cross reference between vertical jump and pounds per inch. So again, there is that formula. So the square root of pounds that a kid weighs times the square root of their vertical jump in inches. Now, the only thing that's not great about that, and I won't say, I'm going to give you a caveat here in a second. It's really hard to get a good score on that if you're small. So as you can see here, like in order to get an 80, if you are 135 pounds, you would have to vertical jump 47 and a half inches, which is like you would be in the top, you'd be in the 100th percentile in that for vertical jump. Now, the caveat I will give to that is that small kids rarely get scholarships. And I know scholarships are harder to find now than they've been in a long time. And at the end of the day, size and explosion and speed is rewarded at that level. And so if it's something that we know is being rewarded, then it's definitely something that we want to chase. So can I jump 32 inches? Great. If I got 2 inches taller and gained 25 pounds, but I can still jump 32 inches, now my force and my power has increased. All right. And then how this translates in real time. You see here, the screen shape here is a 2025 lineman for us. As you saw in that chart earlier, we graduated 2 of our linemen, and we're looking to see where we can, our young guys stepping up, some of our best JV guys. He played center for us in JV, did a real good job for us this year. And as you look at his chart, what he's being compared to here is an aggregate of our starting 5 linemen this season. And as you can see, size-wise, he's actually exceeds the average for pounds per inch. And for back squat, he's going to bridge that gap. I don't doubt that one bit. Another 6, 7, 8 months in the weight room before next season, he's going to bridge that gap. And he will for his bench press as well. He's a stout, strong kid. I don't worry about his strength development. He's a hardworking kid. He'll be just fine. But at the end of the day, we see his vertical needs to improve, but the massive gap here is in his top end speed. Now, I don't need my center to be straight line fast if I'm not disagreeing with you, but we do things in our offense where if the alignment is correct, we're going to pull our center as a check. This year, we had a very athletic center, a kid that can run 18 miles an hour. If the center you had could run 18 and the center you replace him with can only run 14, how much slower is he going to get to that pull? And then how much different is your offense look? And what things can we and can't we do now that we have a less athletic kid in that spot? Or we can really focus on this. We can work our tail off that, like I said to him a couple of days ago, you're not a terrible player for being terribly slow. So what if we could just be average? What if we could get him to about 15 and a half to 16 miles an hour? It's going to get him right about here. And you're not going to see this indent in his shape. And it's probably going to allow him to be a lot more productive on the field. All right. So I give this presentation on the shoulder of giants. I've learned from incredibly smart people. Twitter is a huge resource for me. Here is a list of people that I follow. This is not the extent of the people that I follow by any means, but every single person on here I've learned something from on my journey to learn more about this craft. And then finally, I want to thank you for taking your time and trying to learn a little bit more for your athletes. I know I learn more from coaches like you every single day. My contact information is there. You can reach me through Twitter, Instagram, email, and then that's my cell phone number. If you want to reach out at any time, I'd be happy to expand or give any more information I could on these topics. And I want to thank Coach Parker, not only for this opportunity, but also for teaching me that if I'm going to coach in Georgia, I better learn how to defend spread formations. Because he kicked my tail as a first-year DB coach when he was at Pickens County.
Well, we had some good players that made a difference, Coach. We had some dudes that could run those 20 miles an hour. That helped.
Absolutely.
And a quarterback. Coach, I'll tell you this, man, and I say this, these clinics aren't necessarily seen by everyone, but they'll be seen by a lot of people in Georgia. If I was still coaching, you'd probably have to turn me down, or you might not be feeding cats in Jackson, but you do a good job, man. I'm really impressed. I learned a lot. That was very interesting for me. I never liked how we measured the kids versus the traditional way, bench squat clean 40s, it benefited some kids more than others, obviously. And I think this is a more fair metric. And if I was coaching, this is what I would be doing for those that are interested in that. I think one of the reasons we moved the ball on y'all several years ago was we tried to stay ahead of what other people were doing. I tried to not do stuff because other people did it and try to really look at what was effective. We get it. We'd see empty 8 times a year. We'd work it 20% of the time for the year and only see 8 plays of it all year. I said, well, we'll just start doing that. And nobody, and it went from that. This is the speed work version of that, my man. So I know all those people you put up on Twitter, they know all this stuff, but the vast majority of people do not, man. So awesome job.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. If I can ever help you out, let me know. Really appreciate you joining.
Thanks, Coach Parker.
Take care.
Yeah, be well.